In Tech Matters, Lockheed and Leidos. This week, Reuters published an exclusive report about a deal that could send shockwaves through the federal IT marketplace. Leidos is close to a $5 billion merger with Lockheed's IT shop. If finalized, it would create the largest government services provider in the country. Joining me with the latest is Andrea Shalal, correspondent for Reuters. Andrea, let's start with the basics. What exactly is a government services provider?
Government services providers do the business of government that the government doesn't have the bodies to do. So they do planning, they do purchasing, they do logistics, they do all those functions, and they basically provide the butts that sit on the seats to do the work.
All right, well put. So if Leidos merges with Lockheed's IT shop, they would become the largest government services provider in the U.S. You write, the deal will put Leidos on stronger footing to cope with lower government spending, increased competition, and delays in new contracts. All right, it all makes sense, but what about Lockheed? How would this merger impact them?
Well, for Lockheed, this is the second of two large transactions. Last fall, they took over Sikorsky aircraft, which made them even bigger than they already were. They're already the #1 supplier in the government, to the Pentagon. And so there were some concerns that they might be getting too big. At the same time, Lockheed is really focusing more on that hardware, whether it's helicopters or fighter jets or, for that matter, very high-end combat ships. What they've decided to do is to get out of the lower margin business that is this government services business and focus on the hardware.
All right, with all these big money projects, all the military hardware, is this a risky move, do you think, for them?
You know what? I think it's a question of focus. So in earlier years, these big defense contractors got bigger and bigger and bigger, and they took every piece of the market that they could get. I think Lockheed's strategy now is to focus on this sort of high margin business. And although the government services business has been a good one over the years, the margins are lower there. And so for Lockheed, it was purely a decision of getting out of a business that is dragging their overall margins as a corporation down. They have said that they liked this business and they didn't necessarily want to get out of it, but the margins made them do it.
Now, Leidos wasn't the only contractor to submit an offer for Lockheed's IT shop. CACI did too. Now, if the deal goes through, will CACI suffer?
You know, this is going to make a very big competitor for CACI, but there is a lot of consolidation coming in that market. There are a lot of separate, disparate players. And, you know, basically, experts expect that there will be a larger wave of consolidation in the services business. I wouldn't be surprised at all if CACI purchases or merges with another company in coming years to get to that bigger scale that Leidos will have now.
Before you go, I'm curious, how do you think the Pentagon will view this merger?
Well, you know, that's a very important question. Actually, the Pentagon was not too happy about Lockheed's takeover of Sikorsky because what they were concerned about is that too much power is concentrated in the hands of too few players, and they're worried about them using, basically exerting undue influence on their primary customer. So the Pentagon's chief weapons buyer, Frank Kendall, is actually working on some legislative language that would give the Pentagon additional tools to question such mergers, in addition to the sort of classic antitrust questions that are addressed. From what I hear, I think that there probably won't be too much objection to this merger simply because they know the margins are a strain for the companies and they have to get to a bigger critical mass to actually make some money in this sector. But it'll be interesting to see what happens once the merger is announced. We're expecting that on Tuesday.
Yep, we'll stay on top of this too. Nice reporting, by the way, with your exclusive report on Leidos. Andrea Shalal, correspondent for Reuters. Thanks again.
Thank you.